Fujifilm makes some of the most desirable cameras on the market in 2025, but that's kind of a problem. You see, because of their growing popularity, these cameras are now becoming some of the least affordable, even on the second-hand market. Well, luckily, there is at least one option left. This is the Fujifilm X-A1, and I picked this one up for a little over $230 body only. And that makes this literally the cheapest X-mount camera I have ever owned, and trust me, I've owned a fair few in my time. What's more, it's small, lightweight, and very capable, and spoiler alert, kinda slaps. But before I can get into that, I first need to talk about today's sponsor, and that's One.com. Now, unlike most other web creation platforms, One.com offers an AI-powered website creation tool that allows you to get your site up and running in just a matter of minutes. Simply answer a few questions, and the AI will generate a customized website design for you. No technical coding skills required. From there, you can easily tweak the design to your liking using the drag-and-drop website builder, and alongside the AI website creator, One.com includes domain registration, hosting, and professional emails all in one place. There are no hidden fees, just straightforward, transparent pricing, plus 24/7 customer support is always available to help should you need it. So be sure to get yourself a 14-day free trial using the link in the description and pinned comment below, and also receive 50% off your new website using the code TomCalton. Anyway, if this really is one of the cheapest Fujifilm cameras you can currently buy, then why aren't more people going for it? Well, I kind of have a theory. You see, I think the X-A1 is often overlooked, mostly because it lives in the shadow of its slightly fancier sibling, the X-M1, which is now a bit of a cult favorite in the budget Fujifilm world, and is a camera that I've personally owned and loved using in the past. Sure, it might be older and discontinued, but it still regularly sells for between $300 to $400, depending of course on the condition and what it comes bundled with. Anyway, the reason why this X-M1 tends to sell for more than this X-A1 is largely down to two reasons. The A1 was a slightly stripped back version of this M1, launched just a few months later and aimed at more casual shooters. The main difference is that it swapped out the fancy X-Trans CMOS sensor found in the XM1 with a more traditional Bayer sensor, and it also ditched some of the metal on the casing for a more plastic design, but overall it's essentially the same camera. Same size, same button layout, same screen, same film sims, same performance, just a lower price tag. Now at launch, it even received some great reviews, but serious photographers mostly ignored it, probably because it just didn't have the same high-end Fuji build that they'd gotten used to, so it quietly faded into obscurity. Fast forward a few years, and after a number of different models, Fujifilm quietly killed off the XA line entirely in favor of a new breed of entry-level camera, the XM5. Not this one, the new one. Yes, that's right, they actually decided to bring back the XM range, which I'm obviously thankful for, but honestly, Fujifilm, just make your mind up. You're about as consistent as the British weather at this point. Anyway, this is all good news for us because all eyes are now back on the shiny XM5, and no one seems to be paying attention to these older, cheaper A bodies, which means prices are staying low. And that brings me onto this little beauty. I managed to pick this up from Japan using Bai for 31,600 yen, or about 174 pounds, which is roughly $230 US. No lens though, just the body, but still, that's wildly cheap for a working Fujifilm X-mount camera in 2025 in pretty damn good condition. And better yet, there's now a growing list of affordable third-party lenses for X-mount to choose from, so buying a lens to pair with this shouldn't destroy your wallet either, including the one I've been almost exclusively using, which is the TT Artisan 56mm f1.8, which looks almost too good on this body as it's recently been made available in this very fancy silver finish. And as you will see later, this lens is sharp, fast, and it costs less than a dinner and drinks in central London. Now, I'll be sure to leave a link and a discount code in the pinned comment below if you do want to check out this lens and any of the other silver versions that TT Artisans offer. Anyway, back to the camera for now, and yes, this is plastic fantastic, but it's also not necessarily a bad thing. It weighs just 330 grams with a battery and card inserted, and despite the materials used, it still feels solid and very well assembled. The top plate and controls are identical to the XM1, with the usual twin dial setup, dedicated mode dial, pop-up flash, and a hot shoe port for adding accessories. Now, the biggest gripe most people will have about this camera is the lack of an EVF, but the good news is that it does at least include a pull-up screen, so shooting discreetly from the hip really isn't going to be an issue. The only thing I would suggest is that you probably need to hike up the screen brightness as soon as it arrives in your postbox, because otherwise, if you're shooting outside on a remotely sunny day, you're probably not going to see a thing. But other than that, she's a reliable little shooter. Now, one interesting little bonus about this camera is that it was actually made with a much broader selection of colorways to choose from compared to the original XM1. Personally, I'm a huge fan of this silver and brown leather combo, and it does definitely make a nice change from all of the black cameras that I usually go for. But anyway, having a nice looking camera is all great until it shits itself when it tries to focus on something, so let's talk about autofocus. Now, I'm not going to sugarcoat this because this contrast detect AF system is definitely starting to show its age a little bit, and in trickier lighting conditions or when trying to focus on objects that appear at the edges of the frame, it would occasionally favor the background over my subject. Face and eye detection certainly work, but it is more sluggish compared to modern cameras, and tracking fast-moving subject is not going to be this camera's strong point. But all of that said, at no point did this camera make me want to take up arson as a hobby, and so if you're mainly shooting portraits, travel, street, or just any kind of slow-moving or static subjects, then this is a totally usable choice. I had no trouble locking focus in daylight and getting sharp results, especially with this 56mm lens on the front. But before we get carried away and start talking about the stills, let's quickly mention the video features. Obviously, this is not going to be a videographer's dream camera, and the choices are capped at 1080p at 30 frames per second, with no mic input, no headphone jack, and no in-body stabilization. But you do at least have full manual control over the exposure settings whilst recording, and so if you just need to capture the occasional bit of B-roll and don't mind it looking like a vintage camcorder, it'll probably do the job. Let's get to the good stuff, the photos. Despite this not having Fujifilm's coveted X-Trans sensor, this camera still produces seriously impressive 16 megapixel RAW files that offer plenty of flexibility in post. While some will probably argue that the cheaper Bayer sensor doesn't quite have the same quirky magic as the original X-Trans sensor, I've also seen a bunch of people online stating that they actually prefer the sensor in this camera because the files are easier to work with in post-production due to it not suffering from false color issues. Honestly, all I know is that if somebody told me that these images were shot with a $1,000 camera, I probably wouldn't question it, and that's all I really care about. As always, I've edited all of the photos you're seeing now using my own set of presets, and I actually think that they pair really nicely with these older RAW files, despite the camera being well over a decade old. And if you happen to agree, be sure to check out the pinned comment that I've left below, where you can get yourself 10% off everything from my web store. But if editing endless RAW photos really isn't your thing, then remember this is a Fujifilm camera after all, so you do have access to film simulations. Now, with this being a very early Fujifilm camera, you won't obviously get the huge menu of film sims that you would normally get on the X-T5 or the X100VI, for example. But you do get most of the classics and a few ways in which to tailor them to suit your own personal taste. So, is this the best Fujifilm camera ever made? Well, no, obviously not. But is it the best one you can buy for under $250? Well, almost certainly, mainly because it's about the only Fujifilm camera you can get for less than $250, but that's besides the point. The Fujifilm X-A1 is compact, fun to use, compatible with a whole range of third-party lenses, and it's cheap, and in 2025, that might be the rarest camera spec of all.